What is going on, Babylonians? It's me, Songs of Rays, back with another Outriders worldslayer video to be able to bring to you, and today we're going to be doing an evolution of the video that I brought out to you last week, which is going to primarily focus more on the AoE side of things rather than the insane kind of like one target initial damage that we can do. And this is going to be called the FlashFreeze build, and the reason why we're going to be calling that is because of how quickly this can clear expeditions. This can clear it in like record times. 2 minutes 41 on Boomtown is my current record, but I can go even faster, I believe, if I can get the spawns right. And I'm genuinely having so much fun just running expeditions with this that it's just insane. It just blows my mind. Before we go any further, make sure you have dropped a like and a subscribe. It really does help the channel out. And let's have a look into everything that's so juicy about this. So first and foremost, we're actually going to look into the Pax Tree, and the reason why is because everything that we're going to be doing for this build will become very apparent and will be explained even more when we actually go through the Pax Tree first, so you get a basic understanding as to why this actually works. So the first and foremost, we do need to have a look at the Undying, where every 5% of our missing health increases our weapon leech and our skill leech by 5%. Essentially all this means is that the more we actually take damage, the higher our anomaly power will be, because from there we will go straight to override, where our anomaly power is increased by 100% of our skill leech, and currently our base value is at 44%. So 44% we've got a bonus towards our anomaly power, which will feed into every single bit of our build and will allow us to be able to do even more damage. So overall this is a very good Pax point to be able to pick up, but it allows us to be able to go further into the tree. Now next up we do have Apothecary, where we pulse for every 5 seconds, healing all players in a 25-meter radius for 2% of all damage done by us in between each pulse. So because of how much damage we will be doing due to the massive AoE that we've got, it means that basically we'll be filling everyone back up to full as long as they're standing nearby us. But you know, once again, I don't really rate Apothecary in terms of like Pax points, but it is quite nice to be able to actually get healed up to full every 5 seconds from that. Going from there is the main reason why this build works the way it currently does, and that's because it got buffed in the last patch, and that is Hastened Influence, where it reduces remaining cooldown of one of your skills by 1 second for every status removed by you or applied to an enemy by any kind of player. The main basis on this is being able to actually apply as many statuses as possible to be able to get all of our cooldowns back. On that second cast we will be doing the majority of our damage, and this will be just from actually just activating one of our skills, and allows us to be able to do massive AoEs, similar to like the nuke build when we did with the with Toxic and Blightfire. This is going to be a different version where we actually use freeze to be able to do the amount of damage. So I do recommend that this is probably a little bit faster because it doesn't rely on the damage over time, but it is going to be a little bit to be able to actually get set up in the first place. So it doesn't do anything with the first cast, it relies on the second cast and every subsequent cast after that to be able to do all the damage. One thing to be able to note with Hastened Influence is the fact that it does mention one of your skills by 1 second, so therefore if you are looking to be able to maximize the amount of cold snap damage that you're looking to be able to do with this build, you definitely want to be able to have your other cooldown off, well, your other skills off of cooldown, so that every single one of those seconds will go straight into cold snap to be able to get it back as quickly as possible. So you do not want to be spamming your skills as much as possible, or at least not your other skills compared to your cold snap, so that you can then actually be able to get the full benefit of this Hastened Influence straight into that skill. And last but not least, we do have Burrowing Charge, where critical shots inject enemies with an explosive charge for 5 seconds, dealing 250% of our anomaly power as damage upon the next critical shot taken. This did get a buff in the latest patch, and it is now down from 5 seconds to now 3 seconds, and this 3-second cooldown is on per target, which means that if you actually apply this to one target and you go and swap to another, there is no 3-second cooldown in that regard. It's if you actually have to fire on the same consistent target every single time, then it does have a 3-second cooldown internally for that. Now if you're not very confident in being able to hit critical shots, what you can do is take off Burrowing Charge, and you can actually go for an Initial Striker. The reason why is because activating skills increases your anomaly power by another 10% for 5 seconds, and obviously, well, this says depending on which of them is higher, but this will always be the case that anomaly power is going to be the highest, so it allows you to be able to benefit from that the most. Going from there, we do have our Ascension points, and as you can see from here, I am level 100, so this is where I put all my points into so far. The main ones you do want to be able to focus on are every single one of those anomaly power builds that we do have, we've already covered on this channel. So you want to put 10 points straight away into anomaly damage, you want to put into resistance pierce, you want to put into anomaly power, you want to put into armor pierce, because we are using no resistance against the fortified and unstoppable force to be able to maximize the amount of anomaly power that we do have. Also, because we are using Override, Skills Leech will give us another 5.5% increase to our anomaly power as well. And then status will allow us to be able to increase the duration of our freeze and the duration of our damage over times, as well as the amount of damage that it will be doing. So therefore status power is a great choice to be able to go for. Other things of note are definitely going to be damage against elites, to be able to do even more damage with things like burrowing charge, as well as the cold snap and the blighted rounds damage that we will be doing. And magazine size has also come in clutch on this, because I am using a rapid firing gun, so the more magazine size that I do have, the more forgiving that this build actually becomes, so you don't actually lose your blighted rounds. After that, you can put them into anywhere. I would recommend probably critical damage and weapon damage, just to be able to help you out, but you can go for a little bit of tankiness. You can go for a few of the kind of mods like critical chance to be able to help you land those like random critical chances or random critical shots, to be able to do things like burrowing charge, etc, etc. But this is just how I currently got it set up, and I'm very happy with how this is currently performing. Going from there, we do have the class tree, which allows us to be able to maximize our anomaly power and then maximize the amount of damage we will do with our freeze. So the first and foremost, you definitely want to go bottom tree to be able to pick up as many anomaly power focused nodes as possible, because this is where the majority of our damage will actually come into. So I have gone for 5 of the anomaly fueled nodes, which gives us a 75% increase to our anomaly power, which is absolutely essential. I've gone from there through wipeout, because I do love wipeout, but most of the time you won't actually trigger this off, because with how it kind of works with killing most of the enemies, you won't actually take them down to 30% health to then actually get the finishing blow. Most of the time this will actually kind of work out that it will help you out with elites rather than anything else. Going from there, we had to grab the max health to be able to go across to the capstone, but I would recommend grabbing Vitality Magnet, which gives you a 6% increase to your anomaly power rather than the cooldown for Gadgeteer. But if you find that you're struggling to be able to refresh those cooldowns as much as possible, and it's kind of affecting the consistency of the build, then I would recommend swapping it round and grabbing Gadgeteer to be able to help you out with those cooldowns. The main focus of this, and the reason why this is so good, and if you were to be able to grab any of the nodes, it would be this one, is going to be exposing frost. The reason why is every time we apply freeze, we're now applying vulnerable, and the reason why we had to have a look into hastened influence first is to be able to understand how that works. So every time we apply a status, we are getting one of our seconds back into our cooldown. So cold snap as standard will just deal freeze, and it will, if we can apply it to around about 10-11 enemies, that will mean we'll instantly get our cooldown back. But if we use exposing frost, that means we're applying 2 statuses at the same time, allowing us to be able to apply freeze and vulnerable, which allows us to be able to get 2 seconds every single enemy that's afflicted by that back straight into our cooldown. So this is definitely one of the better nodes that actually exists in the class tree, and I highly recommend that you always pick this up if you are going for this build. Obviously it will help out with a little bit of damage as well, but it is mainly to be able to get your cooldowns back faster. After that, it is pretty much just finish the rest of the tree off. If I was to have a point that was left over, so what you could do is potentially take off Mark for Execution, and what you can do is maybe put it into the cooldowns, maybe put it into Fracture, maybe put it into Resistance Pierce, which will increase the amount of damage that you will be doing through the enemy's resistance. Also on top of that, it will go into the amount of anomaly power you have, and additionally you can have Vitality Magnet. I probably would recommend a Disturbance Coating over the Vitality Magnet, just due to all the benefits that it will actually give you, but I'm very happy with Marked for Execution. I found this to be the most consistent, but feel free to amend this build wherever you see fit. Next up, we do have the skills, and I thought it's kind of pretty obvious how this kind of works, but Blighted Rounds is there to be able to trigger the toxic multipliers, but it's also there to be able to apply Blight Fire, and on top of that, it will allow us to be able to do even more damage and get the bonuses from having this skill active through things like To the Bone, where we're able to have some additional anomaly-based damage multipliers just from having this active. The main focus on that afterwards is to be able to keep Blighted Rounds active at all times, and that's where Fixing Wave comes into it, allowing us to be able to keep healthy, but at the same time being able to replenish the magazine of our gun, so that we always have Blighted Rounds pretty much available and ready for when we actually activate our Burrowing Charge, or when we want to apply our Blight Fire as well. Lastly, we do have our Cold Snap, and Cold Snap is going to be our main AoE damage dealer, and I would recommend that you do have this. Now, what you can do with this build is mix and match. You can go for different skills if you do actually fancy it, and what I mean by this is while Cold Snap is definitely the best when it comes to AoE, it's not necessarily the best when it comes to bossing. So what you can do is you can, because of Haste and Influence not having any specific kind of like anything that stops you from using it with other skills, it allows you to be able to use the whole spectrum. What you can do is use things like Pain Launcher to be able to deal damage through that. It's really good at bossing, especially if you can put it at the feet of them. You can go for other things like cryo turrets. You can use shrapnel as well to a decent effect. Obviously not as good as depleted core based versions, but it can be used pretty decent because it allows you to be able to chuck them out a bit more often. And obviously the possibilities are pretty much endless when it comes to that, so you can actually mix and match this build with any other skill that you do actually fancy taking. Now before we go into the armor and the gear and everything like that, we do have, this video is currently sponsored, so here's a word from our sponsors.
Now a quick sponsored message. If you don't have enough time, nerves or any good teammates, but you still want to have all of the cool weapons, armor and mods, we suggest you visit this website, www.deving.net. They boost in Destiny 2, The Division 2 and many others. Leveling, expeditions, custom streamer builds and guns with high rolls and so on. You can choose what you need. The boost works with account sharing and self-play, so they do everything for you without cheats or bug abuse. We have tested this service in the past ourselves and we can recommend you these guys. They can be trusted. This site has been working for many years and it's got a lot of client reviews and payment methods. You can check this yourself, and with the code Babylon you'll have a 15% discount on all their services. If you didn't get it or you have any questions, then feel free to contact an operator.
And perfect, glad to have you back. In that case, let's have a look into the weapons first. So the first weapon that we do have is, I've got a legendary that I would recommend, which would be a little bit easier to be able to farm because obviously they do have the fixed stats on them. And we do also have some purples that I would recommend as well to be able to go into those as well. So first and foremost, you definitely want to be able to grab yourself a weapon that has armor, pierce, you definitely want to grab something that has status power, and you want to have something that has skills, life, leech. The reason why is all three of these will feed straight back into the build and will allow you to be able to do some crazy things. So to be able to fit this category, I have gone for a Wicker. The reason why I've gone for the Wicker is because it does have all three of those stats. It also has ultimate Ashen bullets, which allows me to be able to apply an additional status every single second. And it also allows me to, it came with a really nice mod of Firestorm, allowing me to be able to summon a Firestorm, deal damage, and also apply Burn as another status to enemies to be able to help the consistency of getting my cold snap back, along with the rest of my skills if I ever do need to be able to activate them. I have replaced the second mod with Mage's Rage because I'm very confident in hitting my critical shots, and this allows me to be able to stack up my anomaly power to be able to apply everything else in the rest of the build. Now, if you aren't very confident in hitting your critical shots, I would highly recommend that you do actually go pay close attention to the ultimate bullets, so you can apply additional statuses every single second. This allows you to be able to have that consistency to be able to always have your cold snap back, and will apply even though you do have blighted rounds as well. So when you have your blighted rounds, you're applying toxic. You do also have like ultimate Ashen bullets to be able to apply ash. I would highly recommend grabbing ultimate freeze bullets, which I do have on this one right here. And the reason why is because this will then set up the rest of the chain a little bit quicker and a little bit easier for yourself for the rest of the mobs. Now, if we were really looking into this to be able to go into an actual purple, you'd probably recommend something along the line that does have armor pierce. You do recommend something that has skills, life leech, and then you put either Mage's Rage or ultimate freezing bullets or something along those lines to be able to help out the rest of the build. If you can get a tier 3 mod that helps you out as well, that's definitely a great call. And if you can grab yourself an assault rifle with a burst variant to be able to extend out further distances, to be able to tackle even the elites at like a safer distance, and that allows you to be able to like increase the effective radius of yourself, your cold snap, your weapon, everything gets fed into it, and it allows you to be able to be a little bit more effective rather than having to rely on an SMG that kind of does spread out really quickly even when you're tap firing, and it does suffer from being able to apply those consistent burrowing charges at a distance, especially on elite. Other weapons of note will definitely be the Heir to the Desert, because this also comes with the 3 rolls that you do want, and because it is a burst AR as standard. So this will actually be a really good weapon to be able to be on the lookout for, and will help you out to be able to have that burst AR. And being able to, and Sandstorm is technically not a bad mod by any means. It will help you deal a little bit of damage. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply a status, which is a bit of a shame, but it will help out a little bit in the damage regards. It's definitely not a bad mod or any kind of like shout of the means. Other guns of note would potentially be the Charred Lance, because this also does come with the 3 stats that you need. It also does come with Resistance Breaker as standard, but when it comes to double guns, and because it is a demolisher, it starts slow and then it ramps itself up. I'm not a massive fan of this gun when it comes to it, but it does have a massive clip size, so it will be very forgiving when you use your fixing wave as well. Alright, so let's have a look into the armor very quickly. Let's try and get this all through. So the first and foremost, I recommend that you do get the helmet, the chest, and the legs of the Flame Leper set. Unfortunately, mine is currently very low level, so I haven't been rocking this one, so I might actually start trying to level this one up to be able to help me out. But as it currently stands, I'm trying to show you that you can use different gear in case you don't actually have this. So what I have gone for instead is a Ronin's Amigasa, and this allows me to have anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and status power. Anomaly power and status are pretty much great for this build, and it also does roll with arms and anomaly to be able to, when I land a critical shot, to increase my anomaly power by a decent amount, a decent chunk, and this feeds back into the rest of the build. I do also have Danger Close as the Apocalypse mod, which is kind of nice. It's not the best mod to be able to go for, but it will actually help me out in most scenarios, because the idea with this build is being able to get up close to enemies in some cases, and being able to use the radius of the Cold Snap to be able to take out the rest of them. So I'm almost guaranteed to be able to get a couple of stacks in there to be able to help boost up my anomaly power. The last mod that we need to talk about is going to be the main damage dealer when it comes to this, and that's Ice Ice Baby. The reason why this is so good is because enemies already afflicted with freeze will receive an extra 1.5 million points of damage from this skill, and the real unique part about this is the fact that this mod will actually scale off of your anomaly power rather than the level of your currently equipped gear. So for example, Arms and Anomaly is a fixed amount, but it will go up every single time I level up that piece of gear that it is attached to. But with Ice Ice Baby, this will go up as I start activating things to be able to increase my anomaly power, and it will fluctuate based on that. So the more anomaly power we can get in the first place, the better it can actually be, and the more damage it will do to then feed into multipliers to be able to actually start to doing all this kind of wiping and just basically delete everything that's on the minimap. Going from there, we do have the Robes of the Flame Leper. Now, this is going to be the main focus of this. Now, unfortunately, the Tier 3 mod is pretty much a dead mod, so the Party Starter doesn't really help us out too much. Obviously, it can help us out a little bit when it comes to healing. It is what it is, unfortunately, but it doesn't do anything in the way of like damage or anything like that. So it's just purely there to be able to activate the set bonus. Now, the set bonus is very interesting in this build as well, so we do actually need to talk about that. And that's where inflicting Toxic on an enemy 3 times transforms the status into Blightfire to deal more damage over time. But unfortunately, that's not the reason why we're using this set. The main reason for this set is actually due to the fact that Blightfire takes away Toxic. Now, the reason why that's so good and why it's so effective is when we actually use Cold Snap to be able to apply Freeze and Vulnerable to be able to try and refresh all of our cooldowns, sometimes it doesn't fill it all the way back up. What you can actually do is when you use your Blighted Rounds on your main gun, is you're able to apply Toxic to enemies to be able to stack it up. Now, that's not even where the fun begins, because applying Toxic is just one status, it's just 1 second of a cooldown. But what it actually does is when it applies into Blightfire, it takes away the Toxic and allows you to be able to reapply the Toxic. But when it comes to Blightfire, because it's supposed to overwrite Toxic in the first place, it will use that as a way to refresh itself, so it then instantly gets rid of the Toxic, allowing you to be able to reapply it again. This means that you can actually use a single elite to be able to get all of your cooldowns back up to full just by holding down and spraying into their face, applying Burrowing Charge, applying Blightfire, and just continually applying Toxic to be able to refresh all of your skills cooldowns as much as possible. This also works really well if you actually do run out of some Blighted Rounds, so then if you have a gun that does have ultimate bullets on them and allows you to be able to every single second apply additional statuses, you then have a way to be able to keep refreshing your cooldown even though your Blighted Rounds is actually finished. So with that out of the way, that interesting kind of mechanic as to how this works, let's finish off the rest of the chest piece. So we do have Unstoppable Force, which increases our anomaly power by 50% of our resistance pierce, and No Resistance against the Fortified to increase our resistance pierce by 65% of our armor piercing. Once again, this is why we actually go into this as an anomaly power focused build, and this is the wombo combo when it comes to it, because when we hold a gun that has armor pierce on it and we go into we have our 10% from our Ascension, we have a flat 40%, then that goes 65% of that then goes into our resistance piercing, which I believe on this build works out at 51%. And then because of that mod of the Unstoppable Force, it takes 50% of that 51 to give us a 25.5% increase to all of our anomaly power as standard. So that's why we're able to be at rest at 1.3 million points of anomaly power. Going from there, we do have the waistcloth of the Flame Leper, which gives us Virulent Compound, gives us Quartermaster, and gives us Freezing Boost. Virulent is very nice against elites, and the reason why it does trigger against elites is because we use our Blighted Rounds against them. So it allows us to be able to get a nicer damage multiplier for everything that we're going to be doing, like Burrowing Charge, like a Cold Snap, everything from there. And then Quartermaster is there to be able to keep our weapon constantly topped up when it comes to magazine, and making sure that we never run out of our Blighted Rounds. And then our Freezing Boost is able to boost our damage to all enemies that are afflicted by freeze by 8%, which our main damage dealer is going to be the Cold Snap, which is going to be doing freeze as standard, so it allows us to be able to benefit from that multiplier. Next up, I do have a Torrential Downpours gloves. Now, for the last two pieces, I would recommend that you do go find yourself some nice apocalyptic purples that do roll with Anomaly Power, Skills Life Leech, and Status Power. But for the time being, these are all I've got. This isn't my min-max build, so I definitely will continue to farm for this. This will come with Max Health, Skills Life Leech, which does feed straight back into our Anomaly Power, and cooldown reduction. We have Anomaly Echo on there, we have our Shatter, we have our Long Winter. Anomaly Echo, every single time we activate a skill, we get a nice bump in Anomaly Power for 6 seconds, and because of how quickly we will be casting our skills, this is pretty much a 100% uptime, so that is a very nice thing to feed back, which then obviously gets fed back into our Ice Ice Baby to be able to increase even more damage. We also have Shatter on there to be able to do an additional 16% more damage to enemies afflicted by freeze. This is very nice because, like I said, with when it came to Freezing Boost, we will be doing all freeze damage pretty much straight away. So therefore, getting a nice 16% increase to that is just pretty much huge, and I would recommend that you do actually get that in your build. The other main important mod to be able to grab for your Cold Snap is going to be Long Winter, which increases the radius of the skill by 50%, and this allows us to be able to do the wiping that we are able to do when it comes into expeditions, and allows us to be able to extend pretty much almost from one end of the map to the other. Obviously, it's not as much as that, but it feels like it at times. And then lastly, we do have the Boots of the Flame Leopard just to round off the three-piece set for the time being. And this allows me to be able to have To the Bone. When the skill is activated, your anomaly damage is increased by 15%. We do also have Toxic Piercer on there to increase the effectiveness of Toxic by 51%, which is equal to 100% of our Resistance Pierce. I don't really rate Toxic Piercer too much when it comes to this build, because our damage over time isn't really going to benefit or going to be applied that much in the first place, and will only come from when we use our Blighted Rounds, and even then enemies won't be lasting long enough to be able to benefit from it. But it will help out a little bit more in trials to be able to, like Arbiter or Ocreal, where they take a little bit more damage. They're designed to take like massive chunks to be able to finish them off. So therefore, Toxic Piercer can help out a little bit there. And then lastly, I do have Life of the Party, but once again, I'm treating this as a dead mod because I don't need any more survivability in this build. So I would be looking for a better Apocalypse mod. So you don't necessarily need this at all when it comes to the build. So when it comes to mods that you can actually put in on this that you can replace, so like things like Life of the Party, things like Party Starter, etc, etc, all those kind of things that you can replace, and you can make this build even better than the clips that you've seen in the background. The things I would probably start with to be able to recommend is going to be a selection of these. It's going to be Icicle Storm, where killing enemies frozen by the skill makes them explode, dealing a decent amount of damage in a 5-meter radius. This really helps out with mobbing side of things. The build already does really well, but when you take out a bunch of mobs and there's a couple of elites stood next to them, it then helps to be able to take out those elites even faster. So Icicle Storm helps with that consistency side of things. Also, on top of that, you can grab Alchemical Mastery, but this would come with the Veil of the Flame Leper. So if you are going for that 3-piece of the head, the chest, and the legs, then this will come as standard, and I would highly recommend that you do keep this in the build, because a lot of the pieces that we are using do have status power, including our weapon, and allows us to be able to increase our anomaly power by 15% of our total status power. So this is definitely a great mod to be able to actually go out and look for. Next up, we do have Captain Hunter to be able to increase our damage against elites by 16%. Always a very good mod to be able to fit in pretty much 95 to 99% of all builds that actually exist in this game. So Captain Hunter is definitely a great place to go for. We do also have Euthanizer to be able to deal 16% more damage against enemies afflicted by Toxic, which will primarily be used against elites due to the fact of how our Blighted Rounds are always going to be up, and our Burrowing Charge is going to be there to be able to deal even more damage. We do also have Power Assimilation to boost our anomaly power by a decent chunk for every single elite that's present on the battlefield, so this is always going to be active and just doesn't really require any kind of input from ourselves, and will help as long as we keep the elites alive. And then there are a couple of tier 1 mods that will actually help out as well. Primarily, we do have Painful Chill, which will apply a small amount of damage to all enemies that are afflicted by the skill. This just helps with consistency to be able to deal a small chunk of an enemy's health bar to make so that the second snap will finish them off. And lastly, we do have Frostbite, where frozen by the skill, enemies have reduced resistance by 20%, and every single bit of the of our skills, every single bit of our damage, like our burrowing charge, is all going to go into the resistance of the enemy. So therefore, reducing that will help with the consistency, will help with increasing our damage. Now, it's not a flat 20% in every single case, so it's not a flat 20% increase in damage to everything that we're going to be doing, but what it will do is it will reduce the figure. So this is probably the least of my priorities in terms of like the suggestions that I've just made to you, but if you do get a role that does have this on, it's not a bad mod, and it will actually help you out in some situations. And there you have it, that is everything to do with the FlashFreeze build. Let me know what you think about this build. Let me know if this is something you've already tried in the comment section down below. I definitely will be reading through pretty much all of them, and I will be replying to anyone that can actually suggest some really nice changes to this, any kind of times that they've managed to be able to pull off in some expeditions. Like I've said, I've managed to pull off a 2-minute 41 in Boomtown, which I am very proud of. I've never been able to get a sub 3 in this game when it comes to any kind of class, but I'm pretty impressed with that. And this is just kind of blowing me out of the water. It allows me to be able to do expeditions to my leisure, to be able to grab as many drop pods, to be able to try and farm Tiago, and be able to try and get my legendary grabs that way as well. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. Massive thank you to the Babylonian family, as always, for their continued support. It really does mean the world to us. And that just leaves me to say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on our next video.